If you like this story, check out my other stories. Shadow Monarch in DC. If you wish to read more or simply support me, then check out my Patreon at web links. You can get access to 3 more chapters or 7 more chapters if you want. Dash. The people of Meereen were still recovering from the thunderous roar that had rattled the city to its core. Drogon, Viserion, and Rhaegal stirred uneasily atop the Great Pyramid, their eyes never leaving the storm-darkened sky. Then, it happened. A shadow fell over the city. Not a mere cloud, nor the ordinary shifting of sunlight, this was something far greater. Titanic. It moved, blotting out the sun, its silhouette stretching across the streets and pyramids below. People looked up, mouths agape, knees weak. Gasps turned to cries of terror, and terror turned to prayers. A monster descended. A colossal shadow dragon, darker than the deepest abyss, its eyes burning like wildfire. Its massive wings, spanning at least 6 times the size of Daenerys's Drogon, beat against the wind, sending dust and debris cascading through the streets. Upon its back, a figure sat, cloaked in black. A king upon his throne, or rather his dragon. It gave him an imposing, godlike aura, the jagged horns rising high as if he were some forgotten Valyrian warlord from the Age of Dragons reborn. In his hands, Dracorizor. The massive black greatsword, pulsing with ember-like veins, hummed with power, every movement making the air around it shudder with heat. As Cannibal swooped lower, Drogon roared furiously, his own wings flaring, but even he hesitated. The ancient black beast turned its glowing gaze to the dragon that looked like an infant compared to it. He snarled. Drogon flinched. Daenerys watched in absolute disbelief. No creature had ever made Drogon hesitate. But this one did. Aeron looked down at Daenerys Targaryen. I told you I'd return. The entire city stood frozen, caught between awe and terror, as the Shadow Monarch made his grand descent. Meereen held its breath. From atop the Great Pyramid, Daenerys, Jorah, Missandei, and Grey Worm stood frozen in place, their eyes locked onto the colossal beast that had descended upon them. Cannibal, the last monster of Valyria, reborn in death, perched upon the pyramid's edge like a harbinger of the world's end. His emerald serpent eyes gleamed with an intelligence far beyond that of any mere beast, his shadow stretching across the city like a great omen. Aeron Grim rose from the back of the cannibal. Jorah staggered back, gripping his sword, his face pale with disbelief. 7 hells. That beast is real. Missandei clasped her hands together, eyes wide, breath shallow. By the gods. Is that truly a dragon? She had seen many impossible things in the service of Daenerys, but this was something that should not exist. Grey Worm, ever the warrior, gritted his teeth and clenched his spear, though his instincts screamed that no weapon he wielded could pierce that thing's hide. He had no name for the terror that gripped him, but he had never felt it so strongly. Daenerys, 3 dragons, Drogon, Rhaegal, and Viserion, wings half flared in uncertainty. Drogon, the mightiest of them all, snarled but did not charge. He could sense what this was. An elder. A predator. A king of their kind. Then, Aeron leapt. He descended from the back of Cannibal, landing before Daenerys in a perfect stride, his black greatsword strapped across his back, his violet eyes glowing like dark stars. With slow, deliberate steps, he closed the distance. When he spoke, his voice carried the weight of something beyond human. Behold, Aeron said, his words low and filled with something ancient. A survivor from the dance of the dragons. Well, no longer alive, but reborn as my eternal servant. He stopped mere feet from her, his gaze meeting hers unflinching, unwavering. The violet in his irises pulsed like they held some hidden abyss within them. Behind him, Cannibal loomed. The massive, blackened beast lowered his head, emerald eyes locked onto Daenerys, and then. Ruah Aarrrrr. A tremor shook the pyramid to its core. The streets below screamed as a wave of sound exploded outward, shaking windows, rattling walls, making men and women alike collapse to their knees. Black fire swirled within Cannibal's maw. Not yet unleashed, but waiting. A threat. A promise. Daenerys felt the heat, even as it did not yet burn. Her heart pounded as she looked up at this creature, a true monster from an age long forgotten. A thing that had outlived many. And as she looked at Aeron, standing tall, powerful, undeniable, she could not stop the words from slipping past her lips. The Mother of Dragons title seems like a sad joke now. Aeron chuckled, tilting his head slightly as he regarded Daenerys with an amused glint in his glowing violet eyes. Don't be harsh on yourself. His voice was smooth, laced with something unreadable, something dangerous yet oddly reassuring. But then his tone shifted, turning sharper. About my offer. Daenerys' gaze did not waver. Is this what you meant when you said you'd return with a greater power? Aeron glanced over his shoulder at Cannibal, the ancient, reanimated nightmare of a dragon that still perched atop the Great Pyramid, its serpent eyes gleaming in the dimming light. Then, his gaze returned to her, unwavering. I wasn't sure what I would really find in the Shadowlands, Aeron admitted, his lips curling into a knowing smirk. This was my greatest find. But I found other interesting things along the way as well. Daenerys studied him, then gestured slightly toward the towering beast above them. I don't understand. With this. With him. You could take Westeros alone. Why do you need me? Or anyone else? Aeron took a slow step forward. Then another. He did not stop. The violet glow in his eyes sharpened as he stood before her, mere inches away. There was no hesitation in his voice, no arrogance, only certainty. Westeros, Essos, you name it, no one stands a chance against me. The words were not a boast. They were a fact. But I'm not out for senseless blood. And neither are you. That's where you come in. His gloved hand extended toward her, fingers open, waiting. You will rule by my side. His voice dropped lower, heavier. And I will be the sword that ensures no one ever dares challenge that rule. His eyes burned into hers. I don't want a nobody as a queen. His smirk returned, but this time, it was something genuine. Better to have the last Targaryen. A true dragon. Silence hung between them, thick and electric. Daenerys looked down at his outstretched hand, at the offer laid bare before her. Power. Protection. Dominion. For a moment, she hesitated. Then, slowly, she raised her hand and placed it in his. Very well. Her voice was steady, though her heart thundered in her chest. Aeron's grip tightened ever so slightly, a flicker of something victorious flashing in his eyes. He turned his head slightly, his smirk widening. Then let there be fire and blood for Westeros. Above them, Cannibal roared, a monstrous cry that rattled the heavens. The silence that followed was deafening, as if the very air had stilled in response to the pact just formed. But then, a voice cut through the tension like a blade. My queen. Jorah Mormont stepped forward, his expression dark, troubled. His hands clenched at his sides, his eyes flicking between Daenerys and Aeron. You know what this means. His voice was firm, edged with something close to desperation. What will the people think? The ones who have followed you, bled for you, trusted in your vision. He took another step forward, his gaze burning with conviction. You fought to free people from chains, Daenerys. Not to place them under the rule of A. He hesitated, glancing at Aeron. A conqueror of shadows. Aeron didn't flinch, didn't blink. He simply smiled. Daenerys, however, turned to face Jorah fully. Her expression was unreadable, but there was a newfound weight in her stare, something unyielding. Don't interfere. The words were not a request. Jorah froze, his breath catching as the weight of her voice struck him like a hammer. Daenerys took a step forward, her silver hair catching the dying light. They will still follow their queen. Her voice carried across the room, steady as a stormfront. Because I am still their queen. Missandei, who had stood silent until now, exchanged a glance with Grey Worm. Neither spoke. But there was something in Missandei's eyes, something like awe. Jorah's lips pressed into a thin line. His fists tightened, then released. He knew he had already lost this battle. His queen had made her choice. Aeron, still watching, chuckled lowly. Well said. His voice was smooth, pleased. He turned toward Jorah, and in that moment, the glow in his violet eyes seemed to sharpen. Do not mistake me, Lord Mormont. His smirk widened, but it held no warmth. I do not demand loyalty from you. It's not your sword I need. It's hers. His head tilted toward Daenerys. A growl rumbled deep in Jorah's throat. But he did not answer. Daenerys exhaled softly, then turned back to Aeron. Now we can set sail for Westeros. Aeron grinned. Now that, I can drink too. Dash. If you like this story, check out my other stories. Shadow Monarch in DC. If you wish to read more or simply support me, then check out my Patreon at web links. 13 comments 0 vote. Bound for Dragonstone. If you like this story, check out my other stories. Shadow Monarch in DC. If you wish to read more or simply support me, then check out my Patreon at web links. You can get access to 3 more chapters or 7 more chapters if you want. Dash. Marine docks. The salty breeze carried the scent of the open sea as the fleet of marine ready to set sail. The Unsullied stood in disciplined rows upon the decks, the Dothraki restless, their hands gripping the hilts of their araks, eager for the bloodletting to come. Above them, Drogon, Rhaegal, and Viserion circled the skies, their shadows casting dark omens over the city they were about to leave behind. In the heart of the grand flagship, Aeron and Daenerys stood surrounded by her most trusted advisors. Jorah, arms crossed and face carved with suspicion. Missandei, ever dutiful, standing close to her queen. Grey Worm, silent but watchful, a warrior always ready for the worst. Aeron leaned back in his chair, one leg over the other, fingers tapping idly on the obsidian table. His violet eyes gleamed with cold amusement. Westeros is weak, he stated, his voice smooth yet carrying the weight of absolute certainty. They squabble, they bleed each other dry. No king holds absolute power, no great house stands unchallenged. And those who might have tipped the balance. I made sure they wouldn't. Daenerys watched him, her lilac eyes narrowing. You've already interfered in the game. Aeron chuckled. I played the game before you even set sail. Some were inconvenient. So I removed them. Others, I left in place, kept them clawing at each other. House Stark, House Lannister, House Tyrell, even what remains of the Baratheons, each believes they can win, but none of them can. His smile turned razor sharp. We can. Jorah stood firm, his expression carved from stone, but his unease was evident. His queen, his Daenerys, was aligning herself with a man unlike any he had ever seen before. Aeron was no mere conqueror, no ambitious warlord with dreams of power. He was something else entirely. A force. And what of the lords of Westeros? Jorah pressed, his voice edged with concern. What of those who have ruled for generations? You believe they will simply bow to you because you arrive with dragons. Aeron exhaled, shaking his head. You still don't understand, do you? His violet eyes gleamed with something primal, something ancient. Men did not make Aegon king. Dragons did. The words hung in the air like a storm waiting to break. The weight of them sent a shiver down the spines of those present. Daenerys, lips parted slightly, her gaze locked onto Aeron as if seeing him in a new light. Aeron continued, his voice measured but unyielding. Aegon did not write letters begging the lords of Westeros for support. He did not play their little games of alliances and betrayals. He set foot upon Dragonstone with fire in his blood and a vision in his heart. And when he unleashed Balerion upon the battlefield, the realm did not ask whether it should kneel, it fell to its knees in terror. Daenerys slowly leaned forward, resting her arms on the table, her eyes burning with something close to admiration. That is the truth, she murmured. Aeron smirked, knowing he had her attention completely. Lords, banners, oaths, they mean nothing when shadow and fire descend upon their castles. When I ride cannibal into battle, when you command Drogon, Rhaegal, and Viserion, the world will remember why dragons rule. Jorah frowned, shaking his head. Fear will only take you so far. Aegon united the Seven Kingdoms, he did not burn them all to the ground. Aeron's smirk remained. And yet he burned Harrenhal to ash and made the Ironborn kneel in their own ruins. His gaze locked onto Jorah's, sharp as a blade. Fear was the foundation upon which Aegon built his empire. Love came later. If the lords of Westeros wish to be spared, they will kneel. If they resist, they will burn. Just as it was before. Just as it should be again. Daenerys studied him, her lips curving ever so slightly into a knowing smile. There was no denying the fire in his words, the raw, unshakable truth of them. She straightened, tilting her head slightly. Spoken like a true dragon, but we still need to seek peace first. Aeron met her gaze, his smirk turning into something more, a quiet promise of the storm they were about to unleash. Jorah exhaled, defeated but unwilling to press further. He could see it in her eyes. His queen had made up her mind. Missandei, ever the voice of logic, spoke next. And what of King's Landing? Aeron leaned forward, his expression darkening. I could take it anytime. The Red Keep is a cage of fools, Cersei, Tywin, Varys, Baelish. Some of them would rather die than surrender, and I am more than happy to grant them that wish. Daenerys tilted her head. Then why haven't you? Aeron's smile returned, slow and cruel. Because I want to see what Tywin does first. He's the only one who truly understands the realms and how they operate, and I want him to serve. He will either kneel to us, or I will reduce the Westerlands to cinders. His voice dipped, cold as death. And when Lannisport burns and the gold mines of Castle Rock are buried beneath fire, the last lion will see the truth, that no scheme, no war chest of gold, no web of spies will save him from what I bring. The cabin fell silent. The waves outside rocked the ship gently, but inside, the tension was suffocating. Daenerys inhaled deeply, then exhaled. Then we sail not just to reclaim the Iron Throne, she said, her voice steady. We sail to end this war before it even begins. Aeron turned to her, extending his hand. His violet eyes gleamed like embers in the dimming light of dusk. I will go to Dragonstone ahead of you, he said, his voice steady, carrying the weight of inevitability. Daenerys regarded him for a moment before placing her hand in his, firm and certain. There was a silent understanding between them, this was only the beginning. I will clear it of any Baratheons that may still linger there, Aeron continued. Then, when you arrive, we will speak of something far greater than castles and crowns. An enemy that exists far north of the wall, one I do not yet know when will appear. Jorah Mormont furrowed his brow, stepping forward. The Wildlings? He asked, skepticism in his tone. Aeron let out a short laugh, dark, knowing. No, he said, shaking his head. Something far worse. Daenerys studied him closely. What enemy in the north, then? She asked, her voice measured, yet tinged with curiosity. Aeron turned away, already walking towards the ship's railing where the massive shadow of Cannibal loomed. Over his shoulder, he simply said, we'll speak in Dragonstone. His words left a silence behind them, one heavy with unanswered questions. Jorah frowned, looking at Daenerys. My queen. She raised a hand, silencing him. Her expression was unreadable, but her eyes followed Aeron as he left. Very well then, she said softly. Aeron stepped onto the deck, the salty sea breeze whipping through his dark cloak as he gazed at the sky. Then, he whistled. A sharp, commanding sound, one that cut through the wind like a blade. For a moment, there was nothing but the rolling of waves and the creaking of ships. Then, the sky darkened. A colossal black blur loomed above, descending like a living storm, blocking out the sky entirely. A monstrous presence, wings stretched wide enough to shroud the entire fleet in its abyssal shadow. The cannibal had arrived. The air shuddered with his descent, and the waves beneath him exploded outward, crashing violently against the ships, nearly capsizing the smaller vessels. The pressure of his presence alone made the warships groan as though the sea itself feared his coming. Every head turned, every soldier, every sailor, every advisor aboard Daenerys' fleet. Awe, fear, disbelief, emotions warred on their faces as they bore witness to a dragon unlike any other. Gods, Missandei whispered, wide-eyed. That beast is unnatural, and I don't mean it because he is a black wraith. Jorah muttered, gripping the hilt of his sword as if he could strike at something so vast. I have never seen a dragon so massive, Grey Worm admitted, his usual stoicism faltering. The Dothraki, fearless warriors who had ridden beside dragons, stared in pure reverence, some dropping to their knees, muttering words in their native tongue. Even Daenerys, mother of dragons, watched in stunned silence. Aeron leapt, his form effortlessly soaring through the air before landing atop Cannibal's back. His violet eyes flickered like embers as he looked down at them one last time. See you there, don't take long. Then, with a single powerful beat of Cannibal's titanic wings, they vanished, a blur of black and shadow slicing through the sky at impossible speed. The force of his departure sent a shockwave across the waters, making ships rock and groan under the sheer power left in their wake. For a long moment, no one spoke. Daenerys, fingers curled against the wooden railing, her dragons stirring restlessly behind her as if sensing a shift in the very balance of the world. And then, finally, she exhaled. Now, she said, voice steady. Set sail for Dragonstone. Dash. If you like this story, check out my other stories. Shadow Monarch in DC. If you wish to read more or simply support me, then check out my Patreon at web links. 13 comments, 0 vote. Pissed. Download the app for additional rewards. More events, more perks. Winning you more free perks. Download now. FrenzyAren. Download app now. The Night Awakens. If you like this story, check out my other stories. Shadow Monarch in DC. If you wish to read more or simply support me, then check out my Patreon at web links. You can get access to 3 more chapters or 7 more chapters if you want. Dash. The sea stretched endlessly before him, a vast expanse of churning gray beneath a sky heavy with storm clouds. Perched atop Cannibal, his colossal black dragon, Aeron felt the salty wind whip against his face as they soared toward their destination. As the mists parted, the imposing silhouette of Dragonstone emerged on the horizon. I've always wanted to see this place with my own eyes, Aeron murmured to himself. To witness its grandeur firsthand. Truly, a remarkable fortress. Dragonstone was a testament to ancient Valyrian craftsmanship, its black stone towers carved into the shapes of dragons, their eyes seeming to watch his approach. The castle's design was a symphony of draconic imagery, gates framed by small dragons' carvings, torches held aloft by carved claws, archways formed from sinuous tails. The entire structure exuded an aura of foreboding majesty. As Cannibal descended, the wind from his massive wings sent waves crashing violently against the rocky shores. The few remaining inhabitants of the island, Baratheon loyalists reduced to a skeletal garrison, gathered in the courtyard, their faces pale with terror. The once proud house had been decimated, its power eroded to the brink of extinction. Aeron dismounted, his boots echoing against the stone as he approached the trembling soldiers. His violet eyes, cold and unyielding, swept over them. Your house is but a shadow of its former self, he declared, his voice resonating with authority. Surrender, and you may yet find mercy from your monarch. The Baratheon men exchanged fearful glances before dropping to their knees, weapons clattering to the ground in submission. The sheer presence of the dragon and its rider had extinguished any flicker of defiance. Good. Now prepare the docks, Aeron commanded, his gaze unwavering. A queen is coming. Ensure her arrival is met with the respect it deserves. The soldiers scrambled to their feet, hastening to fulfill his orders. Satisfied, Aeron turned toward the heart of the fortress. Navigating the labyrinthine corridors adorned with grotesque gargoyles and dragon motifs, he made his way to the war room. This round room, perched atop the stone drum tower, was illuminated by 4 tall windows facing each cardinal direction. The walls, bare and black, seemed to absorb the light, creating an atmosphere of solemnity. At the center stood the carved table, a monumental slab carved and painted to depict the entirety of Westeros. It spanned from the frozen north to the sunlit south, with intricate details marking every river, mountain, and city. Aeron approached the table, his fingers tracing the contours of the carved lands. He envisioned the conquests to come, the alliances to forge, and the battles that would shape the future. This table had once been the war room of Aegon the Conqueror, where strategies were devised, and empires born. Now, it was his turn. Seating himself in the king's chair, Aeron gazed upon the map before him. The weight of history pressed down, but he bore it with the confidence of one destined to carve his own legacy into the annals of time. Let the game begin, he whispered, a smirk playing at the corners of his lips. North, beyond the wall. The wind beyond the wall howled like a mourning beast. Snow lashed across the campfires of 2 armies that once would have torn each other apart without hesitation. But now they stood on the same frozen ground, watched the same horizon, and feared the same death creeping ever closer. At the center of the no man's land, Lord Commander Jeor Mormont stood tall in his black furs, the firelight casting deep lines on his weathered face. Across from him stood Mance Rayder, the king beyond the wall, draped in his patchwork cloak of stolen silks and wolf pelts, his eyes sharp and storm-touched. They stood in silence for a time, the only sound between them the crackle of flame and the distant call of an owl. Then Mormont spoke. I've seen enough corpses rise to know the stories were all wrong, Mormont said, his voice low and rough. They don't just kill. They erase. Turn men into monsters. And they're marching. Mance studied him, arms folded. He said. I've seen whole villages turn to ice. No screams. No blood. Just bones, and blue eyes watching from the woods. Then you understand why I'm here. Mormont stepped forward, crunching through snow. There's no future in fighting each other while death walks behind us. Mance scoffed. Took the Night's Watch long enough to see that. How many of mine have you killed over the years, Mormont? How many burned alive on your orders? On the orders of those before you? Too many, Mormont said without flinching. But there'll be no one left to remember them if we don't put it behind us. Mance tilted his head. So what's changed? What made the old bear open his gates to wildlings? Mormont looked up, to the swirling gray skies beyond the trees. A man came to Castle Black, he said. A stranger. A boy, really, with the eyes of something ancient. Called himself Aeron. Mance raised an eyebrow. I've heard whispers. They say he rides a wolf of shadow and flame. Mormont nodded slowly. He brought shadow with him all right. But it's not the wolf that convinced me. It's what he said. Fight among yourselves if you want. But when the real enemy is watching and hiding in the snow, it will not care for kings or bastards or brothers. It will devour all. The wind howled louder, as if to punctuate the words. Mance was quiet. So, Mormont said. I offer this, safe passage through the wall. Your people settle where they can. The price. When the dead come, you'll fight beside us. Mance took a long breath, scanning the faces of the Night's Watch behind Mormont, and then his own people behind him. Mothers clutching children. Men with scars from 100 battles. People who had run long enough. We've bled for freedom, Mance said. But I won't let my people die for pride. You've got your deal, Lord Commander. The two men stepped forward, and for the first time in 1,000 years, a king beyond the wall and a Lord Commander of the Night's Watch shook hands. May the old gods and the new help us, Mormont muttered. They'd better, Mance replied. Because what's coming, I don't think it fears gods. As they turned to relay the pact to their men, a distant horn blew in the wind. Once, it would have meant war. Now, it sounded like a warning. Like the edge of something greater, something darker, approaching. Dragonstone. The sea crashed lazily against the jagged rocks of Dragonstone, the skies above were dull and overcast, casting a gray pallor over the ancient Targaryen stronghold. But Aeron stood at the edge of the docks, arms crossed, cloak fluttering behind him like the wings of a great beast, glaring at the horizon with clear irritation. His violet eyes narrowed. Maybe I was a bit too fast. He muttered under his breath, the words laced with dry frustration. They won't be here anytime soon. He exhaled sharply, turning away from the endless stretch of sea, boots echoing across the wooden dock. I might as well. Ding. The sudden sound of the system alert was like a bell tolling for war. A deep, low chime, followed by a flash of light only he could see. System notification. The frost that ends all fire has awakened. The apostle of the great other is now aware of your existence. Aeron's body tensed like a drawn bowstring. His violet eyes glowed brighter, pulsing with shadow and fire, a flicker of power swirling beneath his skin. He stared at the message, lips curling into something between a snarl and a smirk. The Night King. The wind shifted. It wasn't just the usual chill of the sea anymore, it was colder, unnaturally cold. The cannibal stirred on the mountain ledge nearby, letting out a deep, rumbling growl, smoke curling from its nostrils as if sensing something unnatural far, far to the north. Aeron clenched his fists, jaw tightening. So you've finally noticed me, he whispered, his voice low, dangerous, and brimming with anticipation. If you like this story, check out my other stories. Shadow Monarch in DC. If you wish to read more or simply support me, then check out my Patreon at. Web links. 12 comments, 0 vote. A visitor. If you like this story, check out my other stories. Shadow Monarch in DC. If you wish to read more or simply support me, then check out my Patreon at. Web links. You can get access to 3 more chapters or 7 more chapters if you want. Dragonstone. The sea moaned below the cliffs of Dragonstone, gray waves lapping against the blackened stone like the slow rhythm of an ancient heart. Aeron stood once more at the edge of the fortress, the vastness of the ocean stretching out before him. His gaze was sharp, thoughtful, but edged with a quiet frustration. She's taking her time, those ships are slow. He muttered, folding his arms. His cloak rippled with the breeze as his eyes scanned the empty horizon. He turned back toward the keep, the weight of decisions hanging heavy on his shoulders. The cannibal shifted in the distance, wings partially spread, a looming reminder of his unmatched might. I'll leave soldiers here, he said to himself. Dragonstone must remain secured, but I cannot wait for her forever, I can do things in the meantime. A flicker of darkness danced behind his irises, his mind already moving 10 steps ahead. It's time I pay a visit to the great houses myself, time to see if the lords of Westeros still remember how to kneel. He turned on his heel. Exchange, he whispered to the system, then vanished into shadow. Winterfell. Snow fell gently over the walls of Winterfell, not in howling gales or blinding flurries, but in a quiet, drifting peace. The banners of House Stark once again flew over the great keep, wolves howling in the wind as Robb Stark, the young wolf, walked the halls of his home for the first time since war had torn him from it. In the great hall, the hearth blazed with fresh fire. Seated at the long table were Sansa, Maester Luwin, and Esser Roderick Castle, while Robb leaned over the maps and ravens, his brow furrowed in thought. The truce holds for now, Robb said, rolling his shoulder, still sore from weeks of campaign. But it feels uneasy. Like the calm before something darker. We've survived much, Sir Roderick said, voice gravelly but proud. And not alone. Not entirely. Sansa, sitting with a cup of tea in her hands, glanced up. You mean that man, the one they whisper about? The Shadow Monarch. Sir Roderick's face darkened with grim respect. He is no mere whisper, my lady, he said. I saw him with my own eyes. He stood among us here in Winterfell. He fought in the courtyard. It was his shadows that brought down Roose Bolton who were with our King Robb. Sansa blinked, eyebrows rising in disbelief. Isn't that just a story? A tale the small folk trade to pass time. Shadowman and a deathless king. If I hadn't seen it myself, Robb said, standing straight, I'd say the same. But I did see it. His power. That wasn't a trick. It was sorcery, aye, but real. Too real. He saved us here from Theon. Maester Luwin added, stroking his beard. And he accused Roose Bolton of treachery. Said the man sought to tip the war in the Lannisters' favor. And then, he said that he would end him. So he did us a favor. Robb asked, half cynical, half wary. Maester Luwin hesitated, eyes flicking to the fire. Perhaps. But his reasons were his own. He sought no crown. No praise. He came, and vanished. Sansa shivered, the memory of that night haunting the edges of her thoughts. Then what does he want? What any power wants, Sir Roderick murmured. To shape the world. Robb nodded slowly. He did send letters telling us to bend the knee. What a strange man, Aeron Grim. A dangerous one, too. But perhaps, not an enemy. From the courtyard below, the sound of steel clashing rang out. Arya, training with a needle, paused mid-swing. She had been listening from the shadows by the stair. Her breath misted in the air as she stared up at the window above at her brother, her sister, their talk of shadows and power. Aeron Grim, she whispered under her breath. And for a moment, the cold wind seemed to still. Maester Luwin cleared his throat, a subtle sound, yet one that instantly commanded attention. There is one more matter, my king, Luwin said, his voice laced with unease. Robb turned, brow furrowing at the maester's grave tone. What is it, Luwin? The old man stepped forward, holding a tightly wound raven scroll sealed in black wax. He offered it with both hands, like it was heavier than it looked. A raven from Castle Black. The seal is Lord Commander Mormont's. You should read it yourself. Robb broke the seal with a swift flick, eyes scanning the parchment. To the kings and lords of the Seven Kingdoms. I, Jeor Mormont, Lord Commander of the Night's Watch, do hereby declare a pact made between my order and the free folk of the North. The wall was never meant to keep out men who bleed and breathe, but to guard against the dead who do neither. The others march. We've seen them. We've fought them. And we've lost good men to them. The free folk have agreed to stand with us to fight the true enemy that rises from the cold and brings death with it. We do not seek your permission. We seek your understanding. If realms is to survive what is coming, old hatreds must die, or they will be buried in the snow with the rest of us. Let the kingdoms prepare. For death does not knock. It breaks the door down. Jeor Mormont, Lord Commander of the Night's Watch. Robb's hand trembled slightly as he lowered the letter, the weight of the words sinking in. What treachery is this? He said, voice rising. They're letting the wildlings through the wall. After generations of blood, raids, and slaughter they would welcome them. Sansa looked equally shaken. But, what if it's true? The others. About the dead. Maester Luwin nodded solemnly. It is desperate, but not without reason. I've studied the old histories. And what Lord Mormont speaks of, it aligns with ancient texts, long ignored. And considering we have a man that commands shadows. Before Robb could speak again, the doors to the great hall flung open with a heavy slam, and a breathless soldier strode in, snow clinging to his boots and hood. My king. He called out. A ranger has arrived from Castle Black. Robb's eyes snapped to him. Who? The soldier grinned despite the chill in his bones. Jon Snow, my king. Your brother. He's here. Robb's breath caught. For a moment, the weight of crowns, kingdoms, and prophecies lifted. Jon, he whispered. His fists unclenched, and a rare smile pulled at the corner of his lips. Let him in. Now. The soldier nodded and vanished. As the sound of bootsteps echoed back down the corridor, Robb turned to the others. We'll ask him ourselves, he said. About the wall. About the wildlings. About the dead. Sir Roderick stood, eyes narrowed. If half of what we've heard is true, then we've been fighting the wrong war. The fire roared brighter as if stirred by fate itself, and outside Winterfell's great hall, a direwolf howled long and loud into the cold night. The great hall of Winterfell was alive with the clatter of plates, the soft murmur of reunited kin, and the warm flicker of firelight reflecting off ancient stone. Though the banners of House Stark swayed proudly above, the mood was somber, grounded in the weight of grim truths and darker omens. Robb Stark sat at the head of the long table, his crown resting beside a half-finished meal. Beside him sat Jon Snow, newly arrived from Castle Black, his face gaunt with fatigue and eyes like black steel. Sansa, quiet but listening, poured him a cup of hot wine. Arya lingered near the fire, whetting her dagger, while Ser Rodrik and Maester Luwin leaned in with rapt attention. Jon had just finished telling them of what lay beyond the wall of cold blue eyes, of villages lost to silence, of the uneasy alliance with the free folk. There's no time, Jon said, his voice low but firm. Every rider we send south should carry the same message: the dead are coming. The wall has never faced an enemy like this. Robb leaned back in his chair, jaw clenched. To hear it from you, he shook his head. The realm is unprepared. Jon looked around, his eyes shadowed. We need allies. Not just swords. People who understand what we're up against. Sansa frowned. What of this, stranger you mentioned? The one the Lord Commander wrote about. The one who warned them first. Jon didn't answer immediately. He looked down at the table. Aeron Grim. The fire popped. Even the flames seemed to dim at the name. He came to Castle Black like a ghost out of legend. Rode a shadow beast. Eyes like purple wildfire caught in moonlight. I don't know what he is, but he's not just a man. Arya looked up sharply. You all have been mentioning this person a lot, he is becoming more of a legend than a real person. No, Jon said quietly. He's very real. He fought with us at the Fist of the First Men. The enemy in the north fears anything, he looked to Robb. It might be him. Then, a cold gust swept through the hall. The torches flickered. Everyone turned as the shadows cast by the fire deepened unnaturally. Jon's own shadow stretched, twisted, and then began to move of its own accord. Robb stood up, hand reaching instinctively for his sword. Jon. I don't. Jon stepped back, his breath catching as his own shadow pulled free of him like oil on water. The shadow thickened, rose, and took shape. Eyes widened. Mouths fell open. A figure stepped out from the black smoke as if the world itself had conjured him from darkness. Tall, lean, cloaked in midnight, with hair black as crow feathers and violet eyes that burned like amethysts lit by fire. He smiled slightly, gaze sweeping the hall. Ah, he said, voice smooth and cool, the smell of Winterfell. Gods, I almost forgot it. Steel hissed free as Robb drew his sword. Arya was already between him and Sansa. Even Ser Rodrik looked stunned. Jon, however, didn't move. He just stared. Aeron, he breathed. Dash. If you like this story, check out my other stories. Shadow Monarch in DC. If you wish to read more or simply support me, then check out my Patreon at web links. 13 comments 0 vote. The Shadow and the Wolf. If you like this story, check out my other stories. Shadow Monarch in DC. If you wish to read more or simply support me, then check out my Patreon at web links. You can get access to 3 more chapters or 7 more chapters if you want. Dash. The hall was still ringing with silence after the Shadow Man arrival. Tension coiled in the air like a drawn bow. Then Aeron Grim, calm as ever, turned his glowing violet eyes to the bastard of Winterfell. Hello there, Jon, Aeron said, a ghost of a grin touching his lips. It's been a while. Jon straightened, his brow still furrowed in disbelief, but he gave a small nod. It has. Aeron's gaze swept across the great hall. His presence seemed to chill the firelight, as if the very shadows leaned toward him in reverence. His eyes passed over each face, lingering a moment on Sansa, then Arya. Well, he said, with a faintly amused tone, a lot of familiar faces. But I believe this is the first time I've seen your sisters. He offered a courteous dip of his head, surprisingly graceful. Glad to see they're safe and sound. Sansa blinked, visibly taken aback by the gesture. Her posture stiffened for a heartbeat before she gave a polite, uncertain nod in return, studying him carefully, like someone regarding a wolf that bowed instead of bared its teeth. Arya scoffed from near the hearth. That's the scary fellow they've all been talking about. She tilted her head mockingly, arms crossed. Doesn't look so terrifying to me. Aeron chuckled softly, the sound like silk brushing against stone. You've got guts, girl. I like that. Robb stepped forward now, boots heavy on the stone floor, steel still sheathed but his eyes cautious. Aeron Grim. Aeron turned to face him fully. Robb Stark, he said, voice cool but not unfriendly. Warden of the North. A sharp clang echoed through the hall as Ser Roderick Castle smacked his hand down on the table, his voice cutting through the moment like a blade. King in the North, he said, firmly, stern eyes boring into Aeron. Aeron didn't even spare him a glance. If I recognized him as king, he said, his tone as calm as falling snow, I would have said that. The air tightened. Robb's jaw clenched, his brow lowering. Then Aeron added, almost idly, there can only be one king in these realms. Robb took a breath, his voice steady but low. And I suppose you think that king should be you. Before Aeron could reply, Jon stepped in between them, his voice quiet but firm. That's enough, before we end up doing something stupid. He looked at Aeron, his expression grateful but wary. I should thank you. You protected Winterfell. Protected my family. For that, you have my thanks. Robb exhaled slowly. The fire behind him crackled, casting flickering light over his features. He said at last. No need for you to call me king just this once. His voice was lower now, not weak but genuine. You protected our home. And for that, I'm grateful. Aeron's head dipped once, a faint glimmer of amusement in his eyes. I don't do it for gratitude. He turned away, his cloak of curling behind him. But it's good to be appreciated. Aeron Grim stood tall at the center, surrounded by wary eyes and clenched fists. Shadows still danced at his feet like loyal pets, flickering in the firelight. I suppose you're going to ask why I came here, Aeron said, voice calm, like he wasn't standing in the stronghold of a king whose title he just challenged. Robb Stark crossed his arms, his blue eyes steady. He said simply, then added with a touch of frustration, was it necessary to come like that? All sorcery, or whatever that thing you did was. Aeron let a smile curl at the corner of his lips. Trust me, that was the most mindful way I could have shown up. He looked around the hall, shadows trailing him like mist. The alternative would have spooked the entire north. Jon and Robb exchanged a long look. Even the hall seemed to hold its breath. Jon gave his brother a subtle nod. He knew what Aeron was capable of, had seen it beyond the wall. Those shadows, those things that killed the dead and the alive alike, like they were nothing. Robb said nothing more, but his eyes betrayed a quiet shift. Wariness now shared space with respect. I came for two things, Aeron continued, the room falling into absolute silence. First, there's a threat in the north. One that has awakened recently. I don't know when it will reach the wall, but it will. And when it does, his violet eyes gleamed. The north will burn. But I can stop it. Sansa tensed, gripping the armrest of her seat. Arya's smirk had faded, replaced with something much colder in her stare. And second, Aeron said, his tone sharpening, I need you, to bend the knee. He let the words hang, heavy as a sword drawn. The room exploded in outrage. Insolent. Barked Ser Roderick, slamming his hand on the table as he stood. What you're asking is. A gust of power rippled out from Aeron's palm. With a crack, Ser Roderick was yanked into the air like a ragdoll, mouth clamped shut by an invisible force. He writhed, eyes wide with fury and disbelief, floating above the hall like some cursed banner. You talk too much, Aeron said coldly. And I've tolerated your disrespect for your soon-to-be monarch, for the last time. Steel rang from scabbards, Winterfell guards drawing blades in defense of their old master. No. Jon's voice cut through like a sword. He stepped forward, eyes fixed on Aeron. Aeron slowly turned his head toward Jon, then released his grip. Ser Roderick dropped to the ground with a thud, gasping for air, shaken but alive. One more word, Aeron warned, and I'll behead you before you even realize it. Sheathe your swords, you idiots. Robb barked at his men. Reluctantly, the soldiers obeyed, the tension dropping a fraction. Robb stared at Aeron now, face hard with questions. Is it true? He asked. That you are the one that killed Roose Bolton? Aeron inclined his head slightly. Among others, he said. Those who would have tipped the balance of power in this war. I removed them. Quietly. Robb's eyes flickered. Then I assume it was you who killed Joffrey as well. Aeron's smile widened, cool, dangerous, but honest. Yes. I helped your house keep its head, he said. While making sure no house could seize the advantage over the rest. Then he raised both hands, shadows curling up his sleeves like smoke, and said, almost cheerfully, after all, I'm a just monarch. No one spoke. Even the torches along the stone walls seemed dimmer in his presence. Somewhere in the silence, Arya whispered to herself, he's mad. But Jon Snow, who'd faced both monsters and men, watched Aeron Grim with something deeper than fear. Something like understanding. Robb Stark sat still at the head of the table, blue eyes shadowed with thought. He didn't speak right away. The king in the north had fought men, monsters, and Lannisters, but this was different. Finally, after a long moment, he stood. His voice, though low, carried like steel through the chamber. If it means my people are going to be safe and sound, Robb said, from the threat in the north, and from you, he paused, his jaw clenched. Then I'd bend the knee to the devil himself. A soft breath left the crowd, half disbelief, half acceptance. Aeron tilted his head, violet eyes narrowing slightly. When you say it like that, he said, almost mockingly hurt, you make me feel like a villain. He lifted his hand. Come out. The shadows under his feet rippled. Then they moved. 20 shadow soldiers emerged from the darkness like death-given form, silent, armored, and imposing. Each one stood perfectly still, their blackened helms glowing faintly with violet light. Then came Giant, a hulking beast of a shadow, tall enough to nearly brush the ceiling beams, glowing eyes like molten ice. He loomed behind Aeron like a grim sentinel. Gasps echoed through the hall. Arya Stark took an unconscious step back, eyes wide. 7 bloody hells, she muttered under her breath, gripping the hilt of her blade with awe. That's the scary fellow they've been talking about, all right. Sansa stood frozen, her breath shallow. They don't even look like they breathe, she whispered, her voice shaken. Are they alive? No, Jon said simply. They're dead people, reanimated by whatever his sorcery is. Robb stared in stunned silence, not even trying to hide his shock. The very air seemed to bow around the creatures. Not just soldiers, weapons. A force that could hold back an army. That's what Robb felt from merely 20 shadow soldiers. Aeron glanced back, his tone relaxed but unignorable. These are yours to command, he said. For now. He stepped away, his shadow soldiers parting like a dark tide before him. They will protect Winterfell. If something unexpected shows up, or if any enemy dares cross your gates. He paused at the massive doors of the hall, not turning around. I have other kings, he said coldly, who require my attention, and their knees. No one dared to stop him. Aeron raised a hand. Exchange. And in a ripple of darkness, like smoke vanishing in the wind, the Shadow Monarch was gone. But the cold he left behind, was a shadow soldier that all in the hall kept looking at in utter confusion. If you like this story, check out my other stories. Shadow Monarch in DC. If you wish to read more or simply support me, then check out my Patreon at web links. To be continued.